Well, good evening, faculty, staff, students, and our community. It's a pleasure to be here. Most importantly, congratulations to the class of 2016, Lyles College of Engineering. This is your moment. It's exciting, and you've made it. Well, actually, almost. We just had a conversation that you still have a couple weeks left. Things may still change, but hopefully not. My name is Orlando Leon, and it's a pleasure to be here. Really, first of all, thank you. It's a privilege and an honor that I can stand before you and just share a little bit about life and hopefully some encouragement to you. I'm only 36 years old. I feel young enough that I still remember what it's like sitting where you are, graduating, but I feel that I have enough years of experience to have a little bit of insight and maybe a little bit of wisdom to share with you. In terms of leadership roles, within higher education, there's actually only 21% of our CIOs in higher education are actually under the age of 45. So I feel very privileged to be here at Fresno State to serve as your campus's first Chief Information Officer. Now, I'm not here because I'm extremely talented or extremely lucky. I would say that really what contributed to me being here, a lot of it had to do with the leaders in my life who contributed to me, poured into my life, who maybe even shared a piece of their advice with me, mentored me, coached me, and at sometimes gave me a little bit of truth that I needed to hear that may have been really hard to hear. So what I hope to do here tonight is to leave you with a little bit of encouragement, and hopefully, even if you take one piece, hopefully it'll encourage you as you go on past graduation. Tonight, what I'd like to share about 4 main points, and they all revolve around the theme of having a choice and the power of having a choice. First, we'll share a little bit of encouragement from just where I've come from. Second, we'll talk about a perspective of leadership, from my perspective of leadership. Third, we'll talk a little bit about change and transition and what that might look like, but also growth. And then lastly, we'll circle back around and just, again, talk about choice and how that might be. So some encouragement first. I have had the honor and the privilege of working, well, first of going to school at MIT with a lot of great and talented students. They truly were really talented. I've had the opportunity to work at UCSF, where you have your world-class doctors and people who will become nurses and physicians. And then at Stanford, obviously another great place with a lot of great faculty, staff, and students. But let me say this, I'm very proud, I'm so proud to be here at Fresno State. You students here, to be able to work with you, to be able to serve you, it's very special in a different way than MIT, Stanford, and UCSF. You have something that I would say is very intrinsic, something very intangible that I didn't see in other students. And I think you should be very proud about that. I want to share with you a little comic, and some of you may have heard or seen this before. But in a classic Sunday comic strip by Charles Schulz, who is the creator of Peanuts, the movie just came out recently, Linus, who I think is the pianist, is eating a sandwich, and Lucy, the resident psychologist who charges 5 cents for her wise wisdom, she's nearby as Linus begins to ponder and think. Hands are fascinating things, he says. I like my hands. I think I have nice hands. My hands have a lot of character. These hands may someday accomplish great things. These hands, which someday may do marvelous works. They may build mighty bridges or heal the sick. They may hit home runs, or they may write soul-stirring novels. These are hands which may someday change the course of destiny. After a moment of silence, Lucy remarks, really in her style, they've got jelly on them. As you look at your hands and your whole body, you can imagine that these hands can really bring joy to someone, or they can bring sadness. They can bring blessing, or they can bring pain. They can do so many things. And my encouragement to you is to really think about what you're doing with your hands and your knowledge and your minds and every other part of your body. Let's talk a little bit about leadership. Now, I'm not referring to necessarily the traditional form of leadership. You don't have to be a CIO or a president, a CEO. You don't even have to be a manager. The type of leadership I'm talking about is something you're doing right here, today, taking those big steps, going to school, graduating, and among your classmates and among your colleagues where you're working, wherever it may be, leadership is really about setting an example. And as Dean Nunes said, it's about setting an example of not necessarily what you do, but who you are. And that is such a key aspect of leadership that I think most people may not realize. There's, of course, leadership by doing something courageous. It may be going against the flow. It may be doing something that's unpopular, that may not go with what everyone else agrees. But to do that means that you're strongly rooted in something that you believe could be a value of some sort, and you're trying to say that this is what's best for maybe who you are or for the people around you. There's also another type of leadership that I think our President Castro, really symbolizes well, and that's servant leadership. And what that really means is serving people around you by putting others in front of yourself in terms of just thinking of others and including others and just really wanting the best for those around you. And I really admire our president for doing that. At my first all-hands meeting, which is a meeting that I gathered my whole technology team in August of this past year, I shared with them what I called my leadership philosophy. And in that, what I was trying to say is, I'm here as your formal leader, but really what I want to do is not to bark commands and tell you what to do, but I'm here to listen to you. I'm here to try to understand what you're going through, maybe the pains that you have gone through in the past years. And really, it could be just maybe coming alongside you. And sometimes, even as a leader, it may be following others and encouraging them in that way. I had a lot of benefit from having mentoring and coaching, and these were informal and formal relationships. If you're not familiar with the concept, coaching is I would say it's someone who comes alongside you in your journey in life and asks you questions. They don't really tell you what to do necessarily. They're asking some really good questions that make you think, that make you ponder and reflect about your own life. A mentor is someone who could do that as well, but really that's someone who may be not necessarily older in age, but maybe older in their career or whatever you're interested in, and someone who comes alongside you as well and gives you those words of wisdom and advice. And I've had that benefit through my past bosses, my past managers, and people who were willing to invest in my life. And that, though, took an effort on my part and a willingness to say that I actually need help. So as I encourage you, I think you are all very strong and wonderful people. And even if I don't know you, I know that you're also strong-willed and you can be very determined. You're here today. You've gone through hours and hours, maybe days of sleepless nights and other things to get here. I know you have that courage and the ability, but are you willing to ask someone else for help so that you can be a better person? So my question to you is, how are you leading those around you right now? What are you doing to be a leader? Let's talk a little bit about change and transition. Change is tough. As our graduating class thinks about walking across that stage in a couple of weeks, there may be so many different feelings going through your mind, emotions. It could be the 5 stages of grief because you're losing something. You're losing maybe your classmates. Maybe you're moving out somewhere. Maybe you're moving away. So you might be sad or confused or angry or in denial or maybe even a little depressed. You may be excited about what's to come. And what is to come may be something that you're not sure of yet. Some of you may be going to grad school. Some of you may be looking for a job. Some of you may have a job lined up. And others may just not know. And that can be a very, very tough time. So as you look forward to what is to come, you'll come to this crossroad where you have a decision to make, a choice, whether to look at your current situation and circumstances as they are, and they can be really tough. So you can look at them and say, oh wow, this is really hard. Or you can choose to look at things in the light of what is to come, what's forward and in the future, and you can have hope. So I'm sure many of you over the next few weeks, maybe you've come to it already, to this part in your life where you need to decide to make a choice of how you'll approach what is to come. I'll encourage you to follow your passions, not necessarily aimlessly, because passions can sometimes lead us if we're not practical about them. And we've heard a lot that sometimes the best passions are those that are there to benefit others and not necessarily for yourself. If you had the opportunity this past Tuesday, and I know many of you might have been too busy, you may have come to the forum on inclusion, equity, and diversity, where you may have heard from student panelists, maybe staff and faculty panelists, or maybe our keynote speaker talk about identity and what, meaning who are you, what shapes who you are and how you do things. For me personally, my identity is something that really shapes how I approach life and how I really approach every decision that I make. My identity is rooted, I would say, in as a child of God, follower of Jesus, as a Christian, someone who sees that I have a need for a God to really, because of who I am, and how that affects me in my day-to-day decisions is as I look out and as I consider how do I react and respond at those crossroads in making a choice. If someone wrongs me, for example, someone breaks into my car or someone steals my phone, how do I respond? I can respond out of vengeance, or I can respond out of hope and forgiveness. And these are tough decisions, and all of you will come to this because life is a set of unexpected circumstances at times. It's not about if it will happen, but when. If you are at that crossroads and you need help, I do encourage you to reach out to somebody. I'd even be willing if you wanted to reach out to me. But here's the thing. Usually mentors are people who are so willing. And if you look around here at Fresno State, you've got so many great people, staff and faculty, who really care about you. And sometimes they're just waiting to be asked to help. And so consider, if you have someone in mind, a mentor or coach, I encourage you to think about asking someone. So what is your passion? And what do you value most? And does that affect how you live out your life and make your decisions every day? Choice. It's a great thing. To be able to have the freedom to choose between one thing or another, it's truly a gift and it's a blessing. And I hope that it's not something you take for granted. Sometimes I do, and I admit that. But you think about others around the world who may not be able to choose what they wear, maybe even what they eat, or if they even get to eat, where to live, and to think about the great blessing that we have to be able to choose. The fact that some of you are even thinking about, well, what do I do after I graduate on May 20th? That's a wonderful option to have, to be able to make a choice and to think that through. A lot in life, you will have to come and, again, make a decision. You have that choice on what you value, what you prioritize, your attitude in approaching some kind of life situation, and a perspective. I mentioned at first that hypothetical example of, well, what if I'm just having a really, really bad day? I drop my phone or someone breaks my phone. Someone maybe breaks into my car. I might find out some bad news about a close relative. Again, at that point in time, I need to make that decision of how I'll respond. I've heard it said once that sometimes the best person to empathize and to relate to a person who has lost a child, let's say, is someone who's lost a child. So as you go through life and you think about all of your experiences, good and bad, who is it that you can relate to? And why is it that maybe you've gone through some of these tough things in life? Carol Dweck, a professor in psychology at Stanford University, speaks about a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And what she means by that, she gives a few examples. Someone with a growth mindset is somebody who embraces challenges. as opposed to someone who avoids challenges. A growth mindset says someone persists in obstacles versus someone who gives up very easily. Seeing someone who sees effort as necessary versus someone who sees effort as fruitless. Someone who learns from criticism versus someone who ignores useful criticism. Someone who's inspired by others' success. So as you look around, are you inspired by what wonderful things your classmates have done, or are you threatened by what others have done? You have a choice to make. How do you approach when you have a really, really bad day? What choice do you make? In 1978, my parents had a little baby boy. He was born, but he wasn't breathing. He was stillborn. At that point, my parents had to make a decision. They could be sad, which they were, and they could continue to be sad and feel hopeless and feel destroyed. Or they could be sad and grieve and then think about moving forward, because there is always still hope. And they chose the route of hope. In 1979, I was born, a little over a year after. A little bit of knowledge about the Asian American culture. The ideal family is usually one boy and one girl. I have an older sister who is 3 years older than I am, and I have no younger siblings. So some days I think about what would have happened if my little baby brother was actually alive. That I would probably not be here. I would not be here in front of you getting this opportunity to just share some of my life. So I look at that and I have a choice to make as well. What do I do with that? In a sense, I call it a miracle that I'm here, that it's not a mistake, and that I'm here in this world for a very, very good reason. And I have a choice what I do with my own life. Congratulations, again, class of 2016. You have persisted through obstacles and challenges. Just by the numbers, 70% of you are your first generation to college from your families, meaning that no one else in your families have been able to go to college. 60% of you are receiving Pell Grants, and most likely without that help from the federal government, you would not be able to be here today. You would not be able to afford to go to college. Over half of you are probably working, perhaps 20, 40 plus hours while going to school, and I commend you for that. That is so difficult, and maybe you're doing that just to survive. 30% of you may actually be, as our president says, food insecure. So meaning you're not actually sure where your next meal may come from. That is so hard. What do you do with that when you don't know? How do you be successful when you don't know where your next meal comes from? Let's not forget about parking. You've made it all these years. You were able to navigate the tough parking situation that we have. And we hear you, our cabinet and our president, we hear you loud and clear, and we're working on that. But most of you may not be able to see that before you leave this campus. As I close, I'd like to share with you a quote by our former president, Theodore Roosevelt. It's titled, maybe it's actually retitled, Man in the Arena. And it was written in April of 1910, so over 106 years ago. In this speech, he emphasized his belief that the success of a republic rested not on the brilliance of its citizens, but on disciplined work and character, the quality of its people. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust, by sweat, and by blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, and comes short again and again. Because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Are you willing to be that person in the arena, the person to step into the challenge, to lead those around you, and to take that risk and to have faith? I'll close on actually going back to Dean Nuna's point, because I think it's a great one, that our president actually shared the words of David Brooks and his concept of eulogy values and resume values. This was at our fall convocation to our entering class of, I don't know what class it is, but our entering freshman class. And he challenged us to think about what we are living for and why are we doing something. So are we really here graduating, going on in life? Are we here to add letters after our name, to build up our wealth, to buy a nice car and to have a nice house? Those could be things. Those are not bad things. But the question really is, what is most important at the end of your time here? And what do you want to be known for? Eulogy values is a nice way to say, what do you want on your tombstone? What do you want people, as they're talking about you, what do you want them to say about you? So I encourage you to really reflect on that, because I think it's a good time as you're at this crossroads and thinking through, what is it that you want others to know about you? Thank you.